I never imagined the day would come when my own parents would look at my children and decide they didn't deserve a safe room upstairs. Jack and Emma, my 10-year-old twins, were told to move their things into the basement, a damp, unfinished space that smelled of mold and grew freezing cold at night. That moment cut deeper than any wound before. My name is Amanda. I'm 35 years old, a pediatric nurse who works 12-hour shifts, and a single mother fighting to raise my children with love, stability, and dignity. 2 years ago, after my marriage collapsed, I accepted my parents' offer to stay in their home. It was supposed to be temporary, a lifeline until I could get back on my feet. But instead of comfort, I found painful betrayal. The longer we stayed, the clearer it became that my children were not valued equally in this family. The house that should have been our refuge turned into a place where my twins felt invisible. That night, as I watched their little faces fall, I knew something had to change forever. Before we continue, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss more real-life family stories like this. Growing up, I always knew the rules were different. I was the responsible one, the rule follower, the daughter who did her homework without reminders, who stayed home while my younger brother, Stephen, was allowed to push limits and bend every boundary. If he skipped school, it was brushed aside as mischief. If I brought home a B instead of an A, I was told I could do better next time. Stephen's mistakes were adventures. Mine were disappointments. Our parents, Martha and Richard, never hid their favoritism. They invested thousands into Stephen's business idea after he dropped out of college, praising his entrepreneurial spirit. Meanwhile, I worked double shifts at diners and clinics to put myself through nursing school one class at a time. 8 years it took me, 8 years of exhaustion, of caffeine-fueled nights buried in textbooks and early mornings rushing to shifts before lectures. I graduated as a pediatric nurse, a steady career, built not on privilege but persistence. And yet, at every family gathering, my accomplishments faded into the background. Stephen's latest tech contract or expensive vacation always stole the spotlight, while my hard-won degree was mentioned, if at all, as a footnote. Still, I built a life I was proud of. I married David, a software engineer, and together we welcomed our twins, Jack and Emma. They became the center of my world, my reason for working harder than I ever had. Jack, sensitive and endlessly creative, filled notebooks with sketches and wild inventions. Emma, bold and outspoken, was the first to defend anyone treated unfairly. For 10 beautiful years, they were the only grandchildren my parents had. But my marriage, after 12 long years, collapsed. David and I grew apart, his absences stretching longer, his patience thinning until love was replaced by silence. When the divorce papers were signed, I was left with shared custody, minimal alimony, and a mountain of bills that his salary had once covered. Suddenly, I was a single mother, balancing full-time work and parenting alone. Childcare costs loomed impossibly high, and saving for rent felt like chasing the horizon. That's when my parents offered their house. "Just until you get back on your feet," my father said, patting my shoulder as if this temporary kindness erased years of imbalance. I wanted to believe it could work. They converted the office into a room for the twins, and I settled into the guest room with gratitude. I bought groceries, cooked meals, cleaned dishes, and taught my children to respect their grandparents' space. It wasn't perfect, but it was survival. Working 12-hour shifts at the hospital, I relied on my parents for school pickups, telling myself this was teamwork, family helping family. In the quiet moments, I whispered promises to Jack and Emma. Just a little longer. By Christmas, we'll have our own place. Somewhere you can hang your artwork without it being pushed aside. Somewhere you can laugh without being shushed. But deep down, I knew the truth. Living under my parents' roof meant stepping back into the old roles. Me, the dutiful daughter who endured. Stephen, the golden child who received. And when Stephen and Melissa had their baby Ethan, the fragile balance cracked wide open. My children, once the center of their grandparents' love, began to fade into the background, treated as shadows in a house that no longer felt like home. It all began the day Stephen called a family meeting. He sat at my parents' kitchen table, Melissa beside him, with baby Ethan dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than my entire weekly grocery budget. "We've got exciting news," Stephen announced with a grin, looking directly at our parents instead of me. "We're finally starting the major renovation on our house." "That's wonderful, sweetie," my mother beamed, clasping her hands as if he'd announced a royal coronation. Melissa chimed in, bouncing Ethan on her knee. The work will take 6 to 8 weeks. We'll need somewhere to stay during the construction. Before I could say a word, my father leaned forward. You'll stay here, of course. We've got plenty of room. I swallowed hard, gesturing toward myself and the twins. Actually, space is already pretty tight with the 5 of us. My mother shot me a sharp look. Family helps family, Amanda. It's only temporary. And just like that, the decision was made. No one asked how it would affect my kids. No one remembered that my own stay was supposed to be temporary and 2 years long. The following weekend, Stephen and Melissa moved in. My father helped set up a portable crib in their room. My mother cleared an entire closet for Melissa's clothes. I remembered how my things stayed in suitcases for months before I scraped together enough for a used dresser. The shift was immediate and jarring. Jack and Emma were told to keep their voices down because Ethan was napping at unpredictable times. Their toys, once allowed in a small corner of the living room, were now considered clutter and boxed up. The television, once shared after school for cartoons, was permanently tuned to Melissa's daytime shows. Meals revolved around Ethan's schedule, not the twins. Even the fridge slowly transformed into Ethan's shrine, with his daycare schedules and photos replacing Jack and Emma's artwork that had once hung proudly. One afternoon, Emma came home in tears. Grandma said I was too loud jumping rope, she sniffled. But Ethan was in the living room with Aunt Melissa. He wasn't even sleeping. She just didn't want to hear me. That same week, Jack rushed in, holding a drawing. He had been chosen to represent his class in an art show. Look, Grandma, he exclaimed, eyes sparkling. But my mother waved him off with a distracted hand. Not now, Jack. I'm helping Melissa pick new curtains. I watched my son's face crumble before he quietly retreated. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, anger bubbling beneath exhaustion, fear clawing at resolve. How much more could my children take? When I finally tried to speak up, the response cut sharper than I expected. Stephen and Melissa need more support right now, my mother scolded. They're new parents. You'll understand if you stop being so jealous. Jealous, that word landed like a slap. I wasn't jealous. I was heartbroken. Heartbroken for Jack and Emma, who were learning that in their grandparents' eyes, they simply didn't matter. Melissa, meanwhile, acted as if the house belonged to her. She rearranged cupboards, criticized the food I bought, and left laundry for days in the washing machine. Stephen invited friends over for sports nights, without asking if the twins had homework at the table. When I confronted my parents about fairness, my father shook his head. Kids are oversensitive. They'll toughen up. Ethan needs more attention right now. But Ethan wasn't even home half the day. He went to daycare while Stephen and Melissa worked. My children weren't asking for extra attention, just acknowledgement they still belonged here. The strain seeped into every corner of our lives. Jack's teacher emailed, concerned about his withdrawal. Emma grew restless, her natural confidence dimming. At night, I'd hear muffled sobs through thin walls, and my heart ached with helpless rage. By late summer, my savings account had grown. I promised myself just 3 more months. 3 more months of swallowing pride. 3 more months of whispered reassurances. 3 more months until I could afford a modest place. But patience wore thin as fall approached. Each week brought a new slight, a fresh humiliation, another painful reminder that my children were outsiders, in their own grandparents' home. And then came the Sunday dinner that snapped something deep inside me. The Sunday dinner began like so many others. My mother bustling around the kitchen preparing Stephen's favorites, while my children picked half-heartedly at food they had never enjoyed but were forced to eat. When Jack politely asked for a sandwich instead, my mother's eyes narrowed. When I was your age, young man, we ate what was put in front of us. Minutes later, Ethan hurled his plate to the floor. Melissa laughed indulgently. He's just exploring, she explained, making no move to clean the mess. Everyone chuckled as if it were the cutest thing in the world. Jack leaned toward me, whispering, "How come Ethan can throw food, but I can't even ask for bread?" I had no answer that wouldn't break his heart. That week, when Jack proudly taped a new drawing to the refrigerator, he found it missing the next day. In its place were Ethan's photos and daycare notes. Melissa shrugged when I confronted her. I needed the space for important information. Jack will understand. He's old enough not to mind. But he did mind. I found him later in his room, carefully sketching in a notebook, tears falling silently onto the page. Emma suffered too. She practiced her clarinet one evening, only to be interrupted by Melissa storming in. "Can you not do that right now? Ethan's napping. And I've got a work call in 10 minutes." Emma's practice was part of a scheduled school session, but she put her instrument away anyway. Later, she sobbed in my arms, worried she would fail her evaluation. When I tried to negotiate a fair schedule, Melissa waved me off. "My work calls and Ethan's sleep come first. Emma can practice her little hobby anytime." Her little hobby. The words rang cruelly in my ears. Emma's band teacher had praised her talent, yet in this house, her passion was dismissed as worthless background noise. Meanwhile, Stephen acted as though the entire house was his kingdom. Sports nights with friends, loud music, empty beer bottles left behind, all tolerated by my parents without complaint. When I raised concerns, my father shook his head. "You're too uptight, Amanda. Loosen up, this is family life." No, I thought bitterly. This was Stephen's life, his comfort, his convenience. My children and I were nothing more than unwanted tenants overstaying our welcome. Even my coworkers began to notice my exhaustion. One evening, Nancy, a fellow nurse, pulled me aside after a grueling shift. "Everything okay at home?" she asked gently. The words spilled out before I could stop them. She listened, then said quietly, "It sounds like your parents treat Stephen's family like honored guests and you like inconvenient roommates. That's not healthy, for you or your kids." Her observation struck like lightning. I had normalized the dysfunction for too long. That night, I called a realtor friend and began the secret search for a new home. Weeks passed, tension mounting. Stephen mentioned casually to my father, "The contractor says the work might take longer. Maybe we'll just stay through the holidays." My father smiled warmly. "Of course, son. This is your home too." The double standard was suffocating. I had been reminded for 2 years that my stay was temporary. Stephen, meanwhile, was assured that he could stay indefinitely, no questions asked. Then came the breaking point. I was midway through a 12-hour hospital shift when texts from my children lit up my phone. From Jack, Mom, Grandpa, and Uncle Stephen are moving our stuff downstairs. From Emma, "Grandma says we have to live in the basement. It's cold and gross. I hate it here." My heart stopped. I called home, no answer. I called the kids' phones, no answer. Finally, Emma texted back, "Please come home. We don't want to be here." I begged my supervisor for emergency leave, handed off my patients, and drove home with trembling hands on the wheel. The 20 minutes felt like hours, my chest tight with fear and fury. When I opened the front door, Jack and Emma sat huddled on the couch, eyes red from crying. My mother and Melissa sipped tea in the kitchen, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Why are my children's belongings in the basement?" I demanded, voice shaking but steady. Melissa set down her cup. "We needed more space upstairs. Ethan requires a nursery and I need a home office. It made the most sense to move Jack and Emma." I turned to my mother, praying for reason. She met my eyes coldly. "It's logical, Amanda. Your children are older. They can adapt more easily than a baby. Besides, our other grandson deserves the best rooms. He's here all day while your kids are at school." Her words sliced straight through me. My children didn't deserve equal space, equal comfort, because they were my children, not Stephen's. I thought of Jack's asthma, the basement's damp corners, the nights when water seeped under the walls. I thought of Emma's bravery, her clarinet tucked away like a shameful secret, and I knew this was the moment everything changed. My father and Stephen came in through the back door, still carrying the smug air of men who believed they had done something entirely reasonable. "Oh good, you're home," my father said briskly. "We've made some adjustments that work best for everyone." "Yes," Stephen added with a shrug. "Ethan needs space to grow, and Melissa requires quiet for her calls. The basement is fine for Jack and Emma." "The basement is damp, unfinished, unsafe," I countered, my voice trembling but clear. "Jack has asthma. Mold could put him in the ER." "You're overreacting, Amanda," my father snapped. "Kids are resilient. They should be grateful. They even have a place to stay." Something inside me shifted in that instant. For years, I had begged silently for recognition, for fairness, for even the smallest scrap of validation. But as I looked at my children's tear-streaked faces, I realized begging was over. I turned to them with a calm smile. "Go upstairs and pack your bags," I said softly. "Take what matters most. We'll get the rest later." They blinked at me, confused. My father's face turned red. "For heaven's sake, Amanda, stop being dramatic. No one's asking you to leave." I faced him squarely. "No, Dad, you've made it clear where we stand, and we deserve better than this." My mother stormed into the living room. You can't just walk out because things didn't go your way. We've given you a roof for nearly 2 years. Yes, you did, I said evenly. And I was grateful. I cooked, I cleaned, I contributed financially, and I followed your rules. But today, you crossed a line. You told my children to their faces that they are less deserving than their cousin. Melissa scoffed from the corner. It's just a room rearrangement. You're being ridiculously sensitive. I met her eyes. Would you call it that if someone moved your baby into a damp basement without your consent? Would you smile while they told you he didn't deserve better? Her lips pressed tight. She had no answer. Stephen smirked. And where exactly do you plan to go, sis? You can't even afford rent on your nurse's salary. A slow, steady fire rose inside me. That's where you're wrong, I said quietly. I've been saving since the day I moved here. 3 weeks ago, I signed a lease on a house. Not far from here, in the Twin School District. We move in next week. Silence fell, heavy and stunned. My father sputtered. You planned this behind our backs? I planned survival for my children, I replied. I was going to give you notice. But today, you made the timeline clear. We're leaving now. At that moment, Jack and Emma returned, backpacks slung over small shoulders. Emma clutched her clarinet case. Jack held his worn stuffed dragon. We're ready, Mom, Emma said bravely. This is absurd, my mother cried. If you walk out that door, don't expect to be welcomed back with open arms. I looked at her sadly. I stopped expecting open arms a long time ago. Stephen stepped forward, trying to soften his tone. Come on, Amanda, let's not make a scene. I shook my head. The scene was made the moment. You shoved my kids into a basement and called it acceptable. I ushered my children toward the door. The porch light glowed above us, illuminating a family divided, their faces frozen in disbelief. As I started the car, my mother rushed out. Amanda, please, you're overreacting. Come back inside, we'll figure something out. I rolled down the window, meeting her eyes. We'll talk tomorrow when I return for the rest. Tonight we're going somewhere, where my children are valued. In the rearview mirror, I saw Jack and Emma watching the house fade, not with sorrow, but with unmistakable relief. The night we left, Nancy opened her front door wide, her face warm with welcome. Come in, all of you, she said, ushering us inside like we belonged there. She had set up her guest room with an air mattress beside the queen bed and stocked the fridge with ice cream. Jack and Emma's shoulders eased for the first time in weeks, their laughter tentative but real, as they watched a movie, while I sat with Nancy in the kitchen. I'm proud of you, she told me quietly. It takes courage to draw a line with family. Her words settled into my chest like a balm. For so long, I had believed setting boundaries meant being selfish. Now I understood. It meant protecting my children. The next morning, I called work and asked for a day off. Nancy offered to watch the twins, but I shook my head. They need to see this through, I explained. We returned to my parents' house at 10 o'clock sharp. My father opened the door, his face carved in stone. Come to apologize, he demanded. No, I answered steadily. We've come to collect our things. Inside, my mother sat with red-rimmed eyes, coffee cup trembling in her hands. Stephen and Melissa were conveniently absent, having taken Ethan to the park. At least they spared themselves the confrontation. Jack, Emma, I said softly, go upstairs and pack. Take only what you love. We can replace the rest. Their footsteps faded above us as my mother spoke. I can't believe you're doing this to us, she said. I'm not doing this to you, I corrected firmly. I'm doing this for my children. The argument spiraled, familiar and bitter, accusations of jealousy, claims of ingratitude. But I no longer let their words pierce me. When Dad sneered, how can you even afford this? I finally revealed the truth. My salary, my savings, the lease I had already signed. His eyes widened. For once, stripped of the illusion, I was helpless. Trip by trip, we carried our belongings to the car. Emma's clarinet, Jack's sketchbooks, the small dresser I had once bought secondhand. With each load, the weight on my chest lightened. By early afternoon, the car was full, and the twins stood beside me, ready to go. This is a mistake, Amanda, my father warned. You're letting pride ruin what's best for your kids. I met his gaze, calm and certain. For the first time in years, I am choosing what's best for them. And that means leaving. The days that followed felt like breathing after drowning. At Nancy's, the twins sprawled on the carpet, laughing over board games, free to be loud again. When we moved into our rental house the next week, they raced through the empty rooms with joy. claiming corners and planning decorations. Our little 3-bedroom wasn't fancy, but it was ours. A sunlit kitchen, a backyard just big enough for soccer practice, a short drive to their school and my hospital. That first night, after pizza and laughter, I tucked them into their own rooms. "I feel like I can breathe here," Emma whispered, and my heart swelled with relief. Life steadied in ways I hadn't dared imagine. I was promoted to charge nurse, my schedule easing into regular shifts, my paycheck larger and steadier. Jack joined an art program after school, his creativity blooming again. Emma practiced her clarinet daily, confidence returning with every note. My parents, meanwhile, struggled without me. Stephen and Melissa stayed another month. But without my quiet labor, the household strained. Mom confessed later she hadn't realized how much I had carried until it was gone. For the first time, she admitted, they had taken me for granted. We began visiting once a month for Sunday dinner. The atmosphere was tentative, but boundaries held. My children were no longer afterthoughts. Their grandparents listened when they spoke, praised their accomplishments, even asked about school. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. 6 months later, an unexpected opportunity arose. A small house for sale just blocks away. I ran the numbers, held my breath, and made an offer. To my astonishment, it was accepted. On closing day, I stood in the empty living room, keys in hand, tears streaming down my face. 2 years ago, I had been a woman, dependent on her parents' conditional support. Now, I was a homeowner, a provider, and most importantly, a mother who had chosen respect. That night, as the twins unpacked in their new rooms, they pinned their drawings to the walls, placed books on shelves, laughed over paint colors. "This is home," Jack declared with certainty. And he was right. Looking back, I see it clearly now. What felt like the cruelest betrayal was actually the push we needed. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pack your bags and walk toward a life where you and your children are truly valued. So I ask you, watching this, have you ever had to make a hard decision? To protect your family's well-being? Share your story in the comments. And if ours resonated, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe for more stories of resilience. And remember, respect is not a privilege. It's the foundation of love. Have you ever had to make a painful choice? To protect your children or yourself, even when it meant walking away from family? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey touched you, please give the video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who might need strength. And don't forget to subscribe for more true family drama stories of courage, betrayal, and resilience.